You don't always hear the storm coming. Sometimes it starts with silence. My name is Carol Jameson. I'm 62 years old, and for the last 7 years, I've lived in a small farmhouse outside of Abilene, Texas, with my husband Gregory. We met at church. He was polite, quiet, the kind of man who held doors open and never raised his voice. After my first husband passed, I wasn't looking for love, but Gregory was steady, reliable. He made me laugh once. We married 2 years after we met. He moved into the house I'd inherited from my parents, a piece of land with stubborn weeds and honest sky. We made a life together, or at least I thought we did. The first few years were gentle. We tended the garden, cooked dinners side by side. He'd kiss the top of my head while I read on the porch swing. He never said much, but I didn't need much. At my age, you learn to appreciate stillness. But then things changed, slow at first. He stopped asking how my day was, stopped saying goodnight. He started spending hours out in the shed, door locked, radio turned up loud. I'd bring him coffee, and he wouldn't even look up. Busy, he'd say. And then came the distance, not just physical, but emotional. He slept with his back to me, ate meals in silence, stopped calling me darlin'. He looked at me like I was furniture, something that had once been new and useful, now just there. I told myself it was age, stress, the heat. That's how it starts, isn't it? Not with a slap, not with a scream, but with a cold shoulder and a locked door. A slow, creeping kind of erosion. The kind you don't see until everything starts to collapse. I didn't know it yet, but that silence, it was only the beginning. It started with the drives. At first, Gregory said he needed to make a trip to Houston. Cousin Benny's got a part for the tractor, he said. Can't find it anywhere closer. One weekend, then two. By the third trip, I stopped asking why. He always left early on Fridays and came back late Sunday nights, sometimes even Mondays. Said the traffic was worse than ever. That Benny's place had no cell signal, but something didn't sit right. He started locking his phone. Changed the passcode one day without saying a word. I caught him texting once. Quick, secretive thumbs, and a smirk I hadn't seen in years. I joked, "Who you talking to? Your secret girlfriend?" He didn't laugh, just muttered, "Don't be ridiculous," and walked outside. The first time he came back from Houston, smelling like cologne, not his, my stomach turned. I knew Gregory. He didn't even wear deodorant unless it was Sunday morning. He stopped touching me, barely looked at me. He used to pour my coffee every morning. Now he barely poured his own. "I'm tired," he said. Of what? I wanted to ask. Of me? But I didn't. I just stared out the kitchen window while the wind moved through the mesquite trees. Quiet. There was a moment. I remember it clear as glass. He was sitting on the porch one evening, staring at nothing, drinking a beer he never used to like. I asked, "You okay?" He looked at me like I was a stranger and said, "I just need space, Carol. Stop hovering." Hovering. That word didn't just land, it cut. I went inside without replying, sat in the living room alone, hands folded like a guest in my own house. It wasn't the silence that scared me anymore. It was the way he started looking through me, like I wasn't even worth hiding things from. Something was happening, something I wasn't supposed to see. And the only thing louder than his lies was the sound of my heart realizing it might already be too late. It was a Tuesday. He came home from Houston earlier than usual. Dust still clung to the tires of his truck, and he didn't even bother knocking the mud off his boots. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman in the passenger seat. She stepped out like she owned the dirt she landed on. Slim, maybe 30, big sunglasses, tight jeans, and a suitcase she didn't carry like it was temporary. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and stepped out onto the porch. Before I could even open my mouth, Gregory said it. "This is Lana. She's going to be staying with us a few days." No explanation, no warning, no shame. Lana pushed her glasses up on her head and gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi," she said. "I love old houses." Then she looked past me, through me, into my home. I blinked, my mouth dry. "Staying." Gregory dropped her bag at the doorway. "She just needs a place while she figures some things out. It's nothing. Don't make it a big deal. Don't make it a big deal." The woman was half my age, smelled like cheap perfume and entitlement, and had her feet on my welcome mat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I nodded. Because when your dignity has already been chipped at long enough, sometimes you forget what protest even feels like. She walked through my living room like she was flipping through a magazine. "This couch is adorable," she said. "So vintage." That couch belonged to my mother. Gregory never introduced her properly, never said where she was from, why she was here, or how long a few days would be. That night, Lana sat in my spot at the dinner table, ate my food, complimented the pie I baked like it was hers. Gregory laughed with her. Not once did he look at me. I washed the dishes while they talked about some concert in Houston, some place they'd both been, together, and I realized then, she wasn't just a guest, she was a replacement, and I was being evicted from my own life, one silent insult at a time. "Just a few days," he'd said. That was 3 weeks ago. Lana's suitcase had disappeared somewhere into the house. Her clothes now hung in my closet, wedged between the cardigans I wore to Sunday service and the coat I hadn't touched since my sister's funeral. Her perfume clung to the hallway, sweet, sharp, like something you'd smell on a bar napkin at closing time. She used my bathroom like it was hers, left her makeup scattered across the counter, her hair in the sink, her shampoo on the top shelf where I could barely reach. I tried to stay civil, tried to be the grown-up, but every time I opened a cabinet and saw her things, I felt a small part of me flake away. Gregory didn't talk much anymore. When he did, it wasn't to me. He called her baby, sweet girl, my peach. He hadn't called me anything in months, not even Carol. He used to say my name softly, like it was a secret meant only for him. Now it was just another sound he avoided. One night, I came into the kitchen and found them dancing. Not real dancing, just swaying in front of the fridge, laughing over something on her phone. His hand on the small of her back, her head resting on his chest. They stopped when they saw me, didn't move apart, just stared, like I was the one intruding. I wanted to ask, "What is she to you?" But I already knew. He'd chosen. He just hadn't had the decency to say it out loud. Instead, he let me wither in the same space she bloomed. Let me cook for them, wash their plates, fold laundry that wasn't mine. I started writing in my notebook again, just small things, times, dates, phrases, a record, not for the courts, not for revenge, for me, to prove that I hadn't imagined the shift, that I wasn't going crazy, that something deeply wrong had taken root in this house. And deep down, I knew, if I didn't leave soon, I wouldn't just lose my marriage, I'd lose myself completely. It was chicken pot pie, my mama's recipe, flaky crust, slow-simmered filling. The kind of meal that makes a house feel warm, even if the people in it have gone cold. I set the dish on the table like I had 100 times before. Gregory didn't even look up. Lana scooped a spoonful, sniffed it, then set her fork down with a clink. She said, wrinkling her nose. It's dense. I blinked. Excuse me? She smiled, but it was the kind that cuts. Maybe it's just me. I'm used to lighter food, healthier flavors, less butter, less nostalgia. She chuckled at her own words, glancing at Gregory like it was an inside joke. He didn't defend me. He didn't frown. He just took a bite and said, "Yeah, it's a bit heavy." Then he laughed, not loudly, just enough. I stared down at my plate. Same crust I'd made for years, same hands that had folded it gently, crimped the edges with care, hands that had once held his when he was sick, when he'd lost his job, when his mother died. I pushed my chair back and stood up. If it's too heavy, you don't have to eat it. Lana raised an eyebrow, playful. Oh, don't be offended. We're just adjusting our palates. It's nothing personal. But it was. It was entirely personal. I cleared the table before they finished, scraping every bite of that pie into the trash. I didn't cry, not right away. But later, in the bathroom with the door locked, I stared at my reflection and whispered to the woman in the mirror, "You deserve better than this." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. The morning felt wrong before I even left the bedroom. There was a stillness in the air, not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses on your chest like a warning. I walked into the hallway and stopped cold. There were black trash bags lining the floor, 5 of them, neatly tied. One had my slippers sticking out from the top. Another had the edge of my church hat poking through the plastic. I blinked, confused. Then I saw him. Gregory stood in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, like it was any other morning. Lana leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone, not even pretending not to smirk. "What is this?" I asked, my voice catching. Gregory didn't flinch. "Your stuff. Packed it up for you." My heart thudded. Packed it for what? He sipped his coffee, eyes cold and steady. "Carol, it's time. You need to go." "Go where?" I whispered. He shrugged. "That's not my problem." Lana finally looked up. "You've got friends, right? Somewhere to crash?" Crash. Like I was a college kid, like I was some lost stray dog they'd finally gotten tired of feeding. "I live here," I said. "This is my house. My name's on the deed. You moved in with me." Gregory's jaw tightened. "And I'm telling you to leave. If you don't walk out that door, I'll call the cops. I'll tell them you're trespassing." The floor tilted. I laughed, soft, confused. "You'd lie to the police? About me?" "I don't have to lie," he said flatly. "I told him last week you'd been unstable. If you get loud, they won't ask questions. They'll just remove you." Tears threatened, but I held them back because I saw it now. Not just the betrayal, but the calculation. This wasn't a moment of anger. It was a plan. Laid out, prepared. He had primed this. And me? I'd been too polite to see it coming. I looked down at those bags, at my life, knotted up in plastic, and I made a choice. I picked them up, all 5, walked to the porch, didn't cry, didn't scream. Because if there's one thing Gregory never understood, it's this. You can kick a woman out of her house, but you'll never erase the part of her that remembers it was once hers. As I stood on the gravel driveway, with my bags and no destination, I whispered under my breath, "This isn't the end. It's the last time I ever wait for someone to love me right." And I took my first step forward into something unknown, but mine. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. The bags were stuffed in the back seat of my old Buick, windows fogging up from my own breath. I couldn't see straight through the tears. I didn't want to call anyone, not my cousin in Midland, not Miss Jeanette from church. I didn't want pity. I didn't want the kind of help that came with whispered judgment. So I drove where I knew no one would look. Out past the cotton fields, beyond the turnoff for the livestock auction, all the way to the old church on Farm Road 18. It had been closed for years, paint peeling from the steeple, weeds crawling up the fence, but the parking lot was empty, and the bench by the front steps still stood. I parked under a crooked oak and sat there for a long time. The silence out there wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, a kind of silence that makes you feel smaller than the night sky. I didn't sleep, not really. I sat on that bench with my arms crossed, watching the stars blur while the wind picked up. Every few minutes, I looked back at my car, half expecting Gregory to pull up and say it was a mistake, that he'd come to his senses. But he didn't. Of course he didn't. I pulled my coat tighter, the kind with my name stitched into the collar, Carol Ann, sewn by my mama in 1965. That coat had outlived 2 marriages, a miscarriage, and now this. At some point near dawn, I whispered into the cold air, "Is this what becoming invisible feels like?" Not even God answered, but something in the silence changed, not softer, not warmer, just resolved. I wasn't ready to forgive, wasn't ready to heal. But I knew one thing for sure. I had survived the first night. And that meant something. I hadn't spoken to Ava in almost 4 months. Not because we were estranged, just distant. Life gets busy, especially when you're 26 and halfway through law school in California. Especially when your mother tries too hard not to be a burden. She had called on my birthday, left a voicemail. I never called back. What was I supposed to say? That I was tired of pretending I was okay. But that morning, as the sun came up over the broken rooftop of that old church, and the dew soaked through the bench beneath me, I pulled out my phone. Battery, 14%. I opened our last message thread, scrolled through old photos she had sent, her new apartment, her cat, a blurry selfie at some protest with a cardboard sign that read, "No justice, no peace." Then I typed 2 words, "Gregory's gone." Then I deleted them. Typed again. Gregory hit me. Deleted that, too. Not true. Not with hands, anyway. My thumb hovered for a long time. And finally, I wrote the only thing that felt honest. Gregory kicked me out. I hit send. No punctuation, no emoji, no follow-up, just that. I didn't wait for a reply. I powered the phone off and laid it face down on the bench beside me. I couldn't bear to watch those 3 dots dance and disappear. Or worse, never appear at all. But just knowing she'd read it, that the truth was out there, floating 1,400 miles west, made me feel less invisible. She didn't need to save me. I wasn't asking for that. I just wanted her to know her mother was still here, still standing, and finally done staying silent. She landed 2 days later, didn't tell me she was coming, didn't ask if I wanted her to. I was sitting in the corner booth of Maybell's Diner, nursing a cup of coffee I couldn't afford, and picking at the dry edges of a biscuit. My bags were still in the trunk. My back ached from sleeping in the car again. The bell above the diner door rang, and there she was, avenue hair pulled into a bun, no makeup, wearing the hoodie I gave her back in high school. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She scanned the room, eyes already glassy, and when she saw me, she froze. I stood up too quickly. Neither of us spoke. She walked straight over and hugged me. Tight. Fierce. Like a child afraid of letting go. I tried not to cry. She pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes, and I saw it. What I hadn't expected. Not pity, not heartbreak. Rage. "Where is he?" she said, her voice low and shaking. I blinked. He's still at the house, I think." She looked down at my coat. "This what you've been sleeping in?" "Ava." You've been living in your car like some damn stray. I didn't want to call you. I didn't want you to worry. Her jaw clenched. You should have. You should have made me worry. There was silence, heavy, awkward, sacred. And then she sat down across from me, took my hand. You're coming with me, she said. I don't care where yet, but you're not spending another night alone. I let her hold my hand, and for the first time in days, the coffee didn't taste so bitter. Because she came, because I wasn't invisible anymore, because my daughter remembered that I mattered, even when the man I married didn't. And because sometimes the person you gave life to ends up being the one who saves yours. Ava never was the type to sit still. The second day she was back in town, she borrowed my old car and said, "Don't wait up." Then she disappeared for hours. When she came back that evening, her cheeks were flushed, her voice low and clipped. "I talked to people," she said. "A lot of people." She sat down across from me at the motel table, spreading out a handful of receipts, notes, and 2 photos printed off someone's Facebook page. I blinked. "What is all this?" "Gregory," she said. "And Lana." Turns out, Lana wasn't some distant cousin's niece or a woman down on her luck. She was a bartender Gregory met in Houston 6 months ago, worked at a sports bar near I-10. Known for flirting with the regulars and tipping heavy when she liked someone. He told people he was single, Ava said. Used a different last name. Said he was a rancher, even wore that old belt buckle you gave him, like it made him somebody. My stomach turned. "And the house?" I asked. "He bragged about it," she said. "Told her it was his, that you were just some woman he helped take care of after her husband died, like you were some charity case." I closed my eyes, not from shock, but from confirmation. It all made sense now. The silence, the cologne, the trips, the way he looked at me like I was an inconvenience in my own home. Ava leaned forward. "Mom, you weren't crazy. You weren't overreacting. He planned this, every bit of it." I opened my eyes and looked at her. And I said the only thing that came to mind. "He underestimated the wrong women." She smiled, not softly, not sadly, but with teeth. And I knew then. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were getting ready to fight. It was late, close to midnight, when Ava spread the documents across the motel bed. Carol Jameson, that was my name. Still was, but in black and white ink. In boxy legal fonts, my name had started vanishing. "Mom," she said, pointing to a line I could barely read. "Do you remember signing this?" It was a power of attorney document, dated 7 months ago. Gregory's name printed beneath mine, signature lines filled out. A notary stamp I didn't recognize. I don't remember," I said slowly. "He once told me it was a medical release. For emergencies." I thought. Ava shook her head. "This isn't for health. This gave him full financial control, access to your accounts, authority to make changes to property records." I felt the blood drain from my face. She pulled another page from the stack. "This is a warranty deed. It's not finalized yet, but look here." He started the process to transfer title of the house to himself. "As if you'd given it to him." "My house," I whispered. "It was my parents'. Paid off since 1987. Ava looked up at me. "He never had any legal right to it. But he was trying to create one." That's when I realized he hadn't just kicked me out of my home. He had tried to erase me from it, bit by bit, quietly, legally, carefully. Not with fists, but with paper. That's what made it so cruel. He counted on me not understanding the fine print. He counted on me not fighting back. Ava gathered the papers, tucked them into a folder, and stood. "We're going to the courthouse in the morning. We're getting this reversed. We're going to freeze the property file, revoke the power of attorney, and flag his name with every office we need to." I just stared at her, the girl I'd raised, now a woman who had come home not just to comfort me, but to protect me. "I should have known," I whispered. "No," she said firmly. "He should have known who he was dealing with." And for the first time in months, I felt like Carol Jameson again. Not just a woman discarded, but a woman getting ready to reclaim what was hers. It was Ava's idea. "I want to talk to her," she said one afternoon, flipping through Gregory's old phone records. "Lana, she's a pawn in all this. And pawns are dangerous if they don't know they're being played." I hesitated. What would you even say? She smiled slightly. "I'll tell her the truth, just not all of it." She found Lana's number through an old credit receipt. Gregory had paid for a dinner in Houston using Carol's joint account. The contact info was still listed on the reservation. Ava texted her from a new number. "Hey, I think we've both been played by the same man." It didn't take long. Lana replied within 10 minutes. They met at a diner halfway between here and Houston. Ava didn't tell me the whole conversation, only what mattered. She thought she was the only one, Ava said when she returned. Gregory told her he was single, had money coming from some land deal, and that you were just a sick relative he was helping until she passed. I winced. Passed? Ava nodded. She didn't believe me at first, but then I showed her screenshots from the lawyer, from the bank, and I had one more thing. She pulled out a folder and laid down several printed texts, dozens of them. Gregory, messaging other women, sweet talk, flirtation. The same exact lines he used on Lana, sent to at least 3 other women over the past year. She saw it all, color drained from her face. She got real quiet. What did she say? Ava shrugged. Nothing at first. Then she just whispered, "I gave up everything for him." I said nothing, because I knew exactly what that felt like. "Think she'll turn on him?" I asked finally. "She already has," Ava said. "And the best part? I didn't have to push. I just told the truth and let him do the rest." Gregory had built a life out of lies. Now, piece by piece, it was starting to crumble. Some battles are fought in courtrooms, others on kitchen floors and living room rugs. Ava knew that if they were going to expose Gregory, they needed more than words, documents, or betrayal stories. They needed undeniable behavior, something you couldn't talk your way out of. "People like him," she said. "They act different when they think no one's watching." So we gave him an audience. He just didn't know it. She waited until Gregory was in Houston again, his usual weekend disappearance, and returned to the house with a spare key I had tucked behind the shed years ago, forgotten by both of us until now. Everything was exactly how we'd left it. Her mug still in the sink, my blanket still on the armrest. The home that had once held love now smelled like someone else's perfume and betrayal. Ava worked quickly. She placed a small camera inside the ceramic vase that sat on the bookshelf in the living room, angled just right to catch the couch, the hallway, and the front door. Battery powered, motion activated, connected to her phone. She placed another, smaller, behind the picture frame in the entryway. "That one caught audio. He's going to hang himself with his own mouth," she said. And I knew she was right. We didn't need to provoke him. We just needed to let him speak, and he would. Men like Gregory can't help themselves. They need someone to push around. And if that someone isn't in the room, they'll talk about her anyway. As Ava locked the door and walked back toward the car, she looked at me and said, "Next time he opens his mouth, we won't just hear it. We'll prove it. And suddenly, for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to listen. It happened on a Sunday evening. We were sitting in the motel room, the air conditioner rattling above us, when Ava's phone buzzed. Motion detected. She unlocked the app. The camera feed from the vase in the living room flickered to life. Grainy, black and white, but sharp enough. Gregory was there, not alone. He was pacing in front of the couch, a beer in one hand, phone in the other. Lana was gone, packed up days earlier, with nothing but a cold stare and a suitcase full of regret. But Gregory, he was still talking like he owned the world. "I told you," he said into the phone, voice slurred. "I handled it. That old lady, she's gone. Packed her up like trash and moved her out." A pause, then clear as day. "I didn't marry her for love. I married her for that house, and now it's mine." Ava froze. We replayed the clip 3 times. Same words, same tone, same arrogance. I felt a chill crawl up my back. Not from fear, not from sadness, from clarity. There it was, the confession, not just of action, but of intention. He didn't just kick me out, he planned it, he calculated it, and he said it out loud. "I married her for that house." It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It wasn't taken out of context. It was Gregory, naked in his own ugliness, too confident to realize the vase beside him wasn't just decor. It was witness. Ava downloaded the footage, emailed backups, copied it to a drive, and texted it to her own attorney within minutes. "We have him," she said. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen one last time, at the man I once made coffee for every morning, and whispered, "You finally told the truth, and now the world's going to hear it." It had been years since I'd stepped into an attorney's office. Last time, it was to settle my mother's estate. This time, it was to fight for my own name. Ava had already made the appointment. Her old law professor from undergrad had started a small private practice 2 towns over, trusted, sharp, and not afraid to get loud when it counted. His name was Mr. Rudd, gray at the temples, sleeves rolled, and eyes like someone who'd seen too many nice women like me walk in too late. We sat across from his desk, the folder thick between us, full of everything. The fake power of attorney, the deed transfer paperwork Gregory never finished, the bank account access logs, and finally the video. He listened quietly, took notes, didn't interrupt once. When Ava finished, he leaned back and tapped the edge of the folder. "Normally," he said, "cases like this are hard to prove. Gaslighting, emotional coercion, undocumented fraud, they're slippery." Then he smiled. "But this isn't slippery, this is solid. Paper trail, witness history, financial misrepresentation, and now recorded verbal intent." He hung himself on his own ego. I blinked. "So, what happens now?" He opened a drawer, pulled out a printed copy of my original deed. The one I had forgotten was on file from the last time I refinanced the house years ago. He pointed to the bold line near the top. "Owner of record, Carol Ann Jameson, sole proprietor, property paid in full, no active liens, no transfer of title recorded." I stared. "You mean, he never actually—" "No, ma'am," he said. "He tried. Filed the paperwork, forged the power of attorney, but it was never finalized by the county clerk. You're still the owner, legally, fully." Ava reached for my hand. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. All this time, I had been living like I had lost everything. But in truth, it had never been his to take. "We'll file a cease and desist today," Mr. Rudd continued. "Get him off the property legally within a week. And if he pushes back, we go public. That recording, it won't just win in court, It'll bury him in front of anyone who ever believed his lies. Ava looked at me, her eyes soft but blazing. Ready to go home, Mom? I nodded, not because I was eager to return, but because I was no longer returning in shame. I was returning in truth, and this time I wouldn't knock on my own door. I'd walk through it like I never left. It arrived on a Thursday morning. Gregory signed for the envelope without reading the return address, just scrawled his name like he always did. Fast, sloppy, like rules were for other people. Inside were two documents. The first was a court-ordered notice to vacate, filed by me, the rightful homeowner. The second, a civil complaint citing fraudulent misuse of power of attorney, attempted property theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, all backed by sworn affidavits, financial logs, and the video recording of his own voice sealing his fate. Ava said the courier told her Gregory's face went sheet white the moment he read my name on the first page. By the time he reached the bottom, he was shouting. He called me 5 times. I didn't answer. Then he left a voicemail, his voice cracking between rage and desperation. "You don't know what you're doing, Carol. This is going to ruin me. After everything I did for you." I listened to the whole thing in silence, then deleted it. Later that day, Mr. Rudd filed the formal eviction request with the county clerk. By Monday, Gregory would be legally removed from the house. No arguments, no delays. He tried calling Ava next. Mistake. She answered once, calm, measured, ruthless. "You have exactly 72 hours to gather your things and get out. After that, a sheriff will walk you to the gate. And if you touch a single item that doesn't belong to you, we'll press criminal charges." He hung up. No more voicemails after that, just silence. But I imagined him walking through the house that wasn't his, sitting on the porch swing I had painted, looking at walls filled with memories he never cared to understand, watching his future collapse into a pile of manila envelopes and notarized truth. He had expected a woman who'd disappear. Instead, he got a woman with a voice, a lawyer, and a daughter with fire in her blood. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel safe. I felt heard. The courtroom was small. No cameras, no jury, just polished floors, a wooden bench, and a judge with silver hair, and the kind of eyes that saw through everything. Ava sat to my left. Mr. Rudd stood at the front, calm and sharp as ever. Gregory was on the other side of the room, wearing a suit he'd never bothered to button right, and a scowl that couldn't hide the fear brewing beneath. He didn't look at me. He hadn't since the notice. The judge read quietly through the initial filings. Then came the footage. Ava connected her laptop to the projector. No theatrics, no narration, just the living room video played in full. That old lady, she's gone. Packed her up like trash and moved her out. I didn't marry her for love. I married her for that house. The room was so still, I could hear my own breath. Gregory shifted in his seat, but said nothing. His lawyer, public defender, young and overwhelmed, tried to object to context, but the judge raised one hand and shook his head. Then came the financial records, the forged power of attorney, the unsigned deed transfer, the eviction threat. The judge took it all in slowly. Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Jameson," he said, voice low but direct, "you've remained composed in the face of profound manipulation and betrayal. Thank you for presenting this case with clarity and restraint." I nodded once. That was all I needed. His ruling came swiftly. The court finds that Mr. Gregory Cole acted with deceptive and malicious intent to obtain property he had no legal right to. The original deed remains solely in Mrs. Jameson's name. The eviction was unlawful. The misuse of legal instruments, including a falsified power of attorney, constitutes civil fraud. He paused, then added, "This is not just about property. This is about dignity." Gregory said nothing. His shoulders sagged, his hands shook, and in that moment he looked exactly like what he was, a man with no more places left to hide. The paperwork was signed by noon the next day, 3 crisp pages, each bearing my full name, Carol Ann Jameson, rightful and sole owner of 14.2 acres, 2-bedroom farmhouse, and everything inside it, down to the last nail in the porch swing. No conditions, no co-signers, no pending disputes. It was mine again, legally, permanently. The gavel had done what no apology ever could. It gave me back my place in the world. As we stood outside the courthouse, Mr. Rudd handed me a final document, a court-issued protective order. Gregory Cole is prohibited from coming within 100 yards of Mrs. Jameson, her property, or any place of residence or temporary lodging, effective immediately. 100 yards. It wasn't much on paper, but to me, it felt like breathing room, like peace finally had a border. He didn't even look at me when it was read aloud, didn't protest, didn't apologize. Lana sat in the back row that day, alone. She wore all black, lips pressed together, no makeup. She never stood, never spoke, just stared straight ahead like she didn't know who she was anymore. Maybe she didn't, but I did. She was someone who believed a liar, like I had. She got up and walked out before the judge dismissed the room. No eye contact, no goodbye, and that was fine by me. Some people are just chapters, not villains, not victims, just pages you turn and never read again. Later that evening, as Ava and I drove past the gravel road leading back to the house, she slowed down. "You ready to go home?" she asked softly. I looked out the window. Sunlight touched the roof. The porch glowed like it had been waiting for me. The curtains I sewed 20 years ago still hung in the kitchen. And I said the simplest truth I'd spoken in months. Yes, I think I am. The first night back, I didn't unpack right away. I just stood in the front hallway, one hand on the banister, the other holding my keys, and let the quiet speak for me. No voices, no lies behind doors, no perfume that didn't belong, just me. Ava moved into the spare bedroom the next morning. She said it was just for a while, but brought all her books and set her coffee mug next to mine, like she'd never left. We ate breakfast by the window every morning after that. She liked it there, the light, the breeze, the smell of my lemon balm plant. We laughed more, sat in silence more, and somehow both felt like healing. The town noticed, too. People slowed down as they drove past. Neighbors waved with both hands now. Old Mrs. Dalrymple from 2 farms down stopped by with a lemon pound cake and said, "I always knew that man wasn't right for you, but I prayed you'd remember who you were." And I had. I remembered that I wasn't a guest in my own home. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't disposable. I was Carol Ann Jameson, daughter of proud landowners, mother of a woman fierce enough to fight, owner of a house that held the echoes of my real life, before it was hijacked by charm and control. Gregory's truck never came back. Word had spread. The court ruling, the video, the public filing, all of it had made its rounds. Nobody said his name anymore. They just nodded when they saw me on the porch, rocking slow, tea in hand, eyes steady. Because the best revenge is not leaving quietly, it's coming back quietly and letting the world remember who you've been all along. It was a year later. Spring had returned to the Texas soil, bold, green, unapologetic. The garden behind the house bloomed again. The porch swing didn't creak anymore. Ava had finally fixed it herself. Stubborn as ever, life had settled into something new, not quiet, but grounded. We shared a routine. I made breakfast. She made strong coffee. She worked remote cases from the dining table, and I returned to quilting. Something I hadn't done since Gregory first said it cluttered the room. One morning, a young reporter from the Abilene Gazette called. She'd heard whispers, a case, a video, a courtroom confession. A woman in her 60s who had been thrown out of her home and had taken it all back. I'd love to do a story, she said. It could help other women. You'd be surprised how many go through the same thing. I almost said no. I didn't want to relive it. But Ava nudged me gently. This isn't about pain, Mom. This is about power. So we sat on the porch together, the reporter across from us, recorder on the table, notebook in hand. We told her everything, not with drama, not with anger, just truth. How Gregory had twisted the law, how he'd weaponized kindness, how I had doubted myself into silence, and how Ava had flown across states just to remind me that I wasn't weak. I was just tired. We didn't give her all the pain, just the parts we'd turned into purpose. When the article came out the following Sunday, it took up a full page. The headline read, "The woman thrown from her house is now its queen." I read it twice, then clipped it out and placed it on the refrigerator with a sunflower magnet. Neighbors brought pie. Someone mailed a thank you card anonymously. But I didn't need applause. Just knowing that my voice, shaky, soft, almost lost, had become part of someone else's strength was enough. That night, Ava and I sat outside, wine glasses in hand. "You think he saw the article?" she asked. I smiled. I hope he did. We didn't toast to revenge. We toasted to returning, to remembering, to rebuilding. Because sometimes the loudest ending is the one written in peace. And we were no longer surviving. We were living like women who knew their worth. And this time, no one could take it from us again.